Namaskar. I'm Ashok Vyas. Welcome to Vision of Asia, Voice of the Community. On ITV Gold, I welcome you to this edition of Special Vision of Asia. We will begin by remembering victims of 9/11 with a report from Edison. In This Week with Padma Shri Dr. Sudhir Parikh, we will also talk about need of self-regulation by media in India. Consul Generals Randhir Jaiswal ji talked to us on Hindi Diwas. In addition to that conversation, we also bring to you activists of Black Lives Matter movement sharing their views, and activist as well as political strategist Suman Raghunathan talks to us about handling of racial disturbance by President Trump. So all this coming up right after these short messages. Stay with us. Welcome back. We begin with a story from Edison, remembering victims of 9/11. Senators recollected that horrible day when America was attacked. And relentlessly, America has continued its pursuit to stay safe and work towards world safety.
Dear Lord, in many ways, we are still grieving the loss of life that happened 19 years ago when the free world was rocked by an attack that took so many lives away. But Lord, today we ask that you keep alive those memories of those who are lost, their bravery, their sacrifice, and that you give us all a heart to do what they did that day, because we know that there is no greater love than to lay one's life down for his friends. So we ask that you keep that in our minds, in our hearts, and in our souls today. Amen.
It is important that we remember this date because, as absurd as it is, those terrorists actually thought they would break the United States of America. They made us stronger. And don't only remember 9/11, remember 9/12, 9/13, 9/14, when this country was never more united. Never more focused on what was right about the United States of America. And now more than ever, we have to remember that. And it is an honor to be here today. But I want you, Captain Enright, Enfield brought to attention something that I wanted to bring to attention. When I think of 9/11, I think of the pictures of the towers falling and the big dust ball, and our firefighters and our police and our emergency personnel running towards that, knowing that their lives were at risk. So I want every one of you to do me a favor. Please stand and join with me in thanking our emergency management, our police, our fire, for what they did on that day and what they do every day to keep us safe. God bless you all, and God bless America.
When the towers fell and we found out what happened, since that day, I actually made a commitment, and I said that I would go back to New York every 9/11, which I will go to right after this, so that I can remember and see the resilience. And every year since, I saw the Freedom Tower getting bigger and bigger to what it is today. It showed me that no one at any point will ever break the United States. We will always be a moving force in the world. Our values are here to stay. We will always stand by each other.
I remember where I was. I'm sure everyone here remembers where they were, what they were doing, and the anxiety and the frustrations and the nervousness and being scared of what is going on and the unknown. Well, here we are 19 years later. We all know what happened. We all reacted. And we've made a lot of changes in our own personal lives, in the country, our first responders, and everything that we do today has a different effect now than it did 19 years ago. And anyone can come here as they walk around this beautiful park, as they sit here and they can reflect, and they can look at this monument that's here for perpetuity, that's going to be here way longer than all of us sitting here, for future generations to always remember. Always remember. And as the senator said, us as a country being united is the most important thing today. I hate to say, unfortunately, what's the environment today is not what this country is really about.
How media can play an important role in mobilizing people's opinion, and sometimes it may stretch its role to the zone where it becomes questionable. That observation of Supreme Court of India discussed with Padma Shri Dr. Sudhir Parikh in This Week. Namaskar, I'm Ashok Vyas and I have the pleasure of welcoming Padma Shri Dr. Sudhir Parikh to This Week with Padma Shri Dr. Sudhir Parikh. Namaste, Dr. Sir, welcome.
Namaskar.
Things are still making us more worrisome with respect to COVID. When you look at India, the mark of 49 lakh COVID affected people has been crossed. How do you see it is likely to play out? Do you think India need another lockdown?
No, India doesn't need another lockdown, but India needs that all the people should behave responsible way. Because right now in India, there's a lot of people are gathering in large crowd. There's a lot of political gathering is happening. A lot of waiting is happening, and all those things has to be curtailed and strictly followed, that not more than X amount of people should be there. But I have seen even political leaders, they are hosting the meeting with the 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people, and most of them are not wearing masks, and they are not keeping the distance. So obviously that's going to spread, and that is the unfortunate part. There is no need to lock down, but need to follow the wearing the mask and keeping the distance. That's the only way to bring everything under control till vaccine comes.
So that being the case, people not paying attention to the protocol, and as you are aware, the new parliamentary session began. There was mandatory COVID test. Over 30 MPs were found to be COVID positive, and more than 50 employees were COVID positive. That tells us that COVID is not sparing anyone. Anything else in terms of the initiatives of government with respect to having made it easy for people to have COVID test? And another angle that I want to bring to your attention, and as an active member of API and other organizations, India seems to be facing a shortage of oxygen cylinders. Do you think there is a way to address that?
Yes, I mean to manufacture oxygen is relatively very easy thing. So I think the government should mandate those companies who are making oxygen cylinder should develop their production, and plus they should also start making the oxygen cylinders in the places where it is possible. Though even though it's probably manufacturing something else, just like when they were the auto company. Manufacturing autos, but they can also manufacture the ventilator. Similar way, there are companies which makes other gases can manufacture the oxygen, and so government has to compulsory or mandate those companies to make the more oxygen cylinders.
So I think that's a good point, and probably there'll be some steps in that direction, because right now what one hears is excessive prices are being charged by the helpless consumers, and moving towards another important issue which has caught the attention of many Indians. Even here, people are talking, and the case started with Sushant Singh Rajput, and in Rajya Sabha, Samajwadi MP and actress Jaya Bhaduri has criticized people for condemning film industry to be engrossed with drug use. You have some comments about this criticism from Jaya Bhaduri and telling people to abstain from blaming the whole film industry.
No, of course, you cannot blame whole film industries. You cannot generalize the whole thing, but we know that film industry is kind of rampantly kind of affected or involved in the drug use, and particularly the younger generation actor and actresses. They are definitely. Not everyone, but a large number of actors and actresses are involved in drug use, and therefore, I think the criticism is justified in a sense. I mean, not a whole industry, but I mean, Bollywood is getting a really bad perception.
Talking about Bollywood and the media paying attention to minute details related to this case, where narcotics department is also playing an important role now. The question came from Supreme Court with respect to another case, and they have Supreme Court have asked media to observe self-regulation. How do you see this observation of Supreme Court suggesting media to have some self-regulation?
Well, it means nothing. It means really the Supreme Court is kind of observation is kind of diplomatic observation, but our constitution gives the right to the media to represent or show the or criticize whatever is happening or show the happening of the events, and that's only way in democracy one can and as you can see classically in Sushant Singh case, when media was not involved, everything was kind of brushed aside, and once media was involved, a whole thing came out in the light, and I think there's nothing wrong in it. Media should be independently, should work and should able to represent or let people know that what is right and what is wrong. That's only way in democracy people will know.
And this observation of Supreme Court came in the context of an issue raised against Sudarshan TV, and I quote, Supreme Court said, the way it was promoted, the program was big expose on conspiracy to infiltrate Muslims in government service. So, Supreme Court denied Sudarshan TV to show 2 episodes of this program, and they say this is putting a question mark on UPSC. And but the Sudarshan TV was saying that this is investigative reporting. How do you see these two different viewpoints?
Well, I mean, it's very fine line, and Supreme Court is right in a way that, of course, media has a fundamental right to express themselves the way they want, or they would like to do, as long as it's a fact. It's a facts, not the rumors or not the kind of unnecessary allegation on someone. But again, the media should also use their judgment to see what is more offending to the community and what is right or wrong. As long as they restrain themselves about right and wrong thing, then I think media should not have any restriction about expressing themselves the way they want to.
Absolutely. Talking about media and moving towards social media and potential role that social media is likely to play or can play in affecting political oriented views. In India also this question came, we talked about it earlier also, but this seems to be an ongoing thing wherever election is near, one or the other party goes, and officials from Facebook were also asked to appear before a committee. So talk to me about your views on any possibility of regulating social media.
Well, I mean, social media should regulate. We should regulate somewhat, because you cannot have any media without any regulations. So it's a good idea to regulate the social media, but to what extent we don't know. And because nowadays, influence of the social media is so big that regulation is important, because that's the only way one can prevent any wrong or any fake news on social media.
There is another issue, Dr. Saab, which relates to imposing certain ideas and responding to someone having shared some WhatsApp message or even having forwarded. So recently you must have heard about a case where Shiv Sainik or Shiv Sena people ended up beating one ex-Navy personnel for having forwarded a message which was critical of CM Uddhav Thackeray.
I think that's not acceptable. It's a kind of gundagiri, So anyone has right to forward any message as long as its messages are real, factual, and it's not offending to any other party or any other person.
So the response of Shiv Sena spokesperson was that they didn't inform the leadership before going out there. So that kind of excuse doesn't sit well with people.
That's right. I mean, it gives very bad name or bad optics to Shiv Sena. It looks like they are kind of doing kind of gundagiri, and which is not acceptable.
Right. And very briefly touching upon the way actress Kangana Ranaut's office space was bulldozered by Shiv Sena post that event, there is a lot of political activity. Now people are looking at it as a political affair, whereas it originally is a law and order question. How do you see this trend where you go beyond the facts and start politicizing everything?
Well, I mean, that's the fact of the life. And so you can't help. So everyone is going to interpret it or take advantage of the way they like or they like to interpret. And so you cannot avoid that politics. But of course, wise people can understand all these things and can interpret appropriately. But unfortunately, you cannot avoid this kind of polarization of any event or any facts.
And before we conclude today, I want to bring you back to USA, and we are in sort of exciting phase. Few weeks left for US presidential election. How do you see the pulse of the people at the moment with respect to Trump versus Biden?
Well, I mean, probably it's very close election, and it will be decided by one or two states whoever wins there. But again, it's very close election, and both party has its own agenda, own kind of blueprint how to win the election. What Trump is trying to do is trying to hold on to his solid base, plus discourage the other left-leaning people not to vote for Biden by showing the negative things about Biden. So that's his way of doing. While Biden real way of doing is to just criticize the last 4 years of Trump administration. So let's see. Time will tell which policy works or which agenda works.
Absolutely. And your parting words from today's This Week show for our viewers.
Well, dear friends, please remember the COVID is still there. And so please wear the mask when you go out in the public. Keep distance, keep personal hygiene, and stay safe and stay healthy. We'll see you next week. Goodbye. God bless America. God bless India. Thank you.
Hindi is not just Raj Bhasha of Bharat, it also carries heritage of rich culture. Hindi is also referred to as the rightful daughter of Deva Bhasha Sanskrit. On the day of Hindi Diwas, we talked to Consul General Randhir Jaiswal about India's policy and the latest initiative in promoting this language.
अशोक जी स्वागत है और आपके सारे व्यूअर्स का मैं स्वागत करता हूं, आपको शुभकामनाएं देता हूं हिंदी दिवस पे।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद है आपका। और भारत से दूर कहीं होते हैं और हिंदी में कोई बात करता हुआ मिल जाता है तो एक अपनापन अपने आप जाग जाता है। पर हिंदी दिवस में विशेषकर सारा ध्यान केंद्रित होता है हिंदी भाषा के ऊपर। तो आपकी दृष्टि में हिंदी दिवस मनाने की आवश्यकता क्यों महसूस हुई होगी और इसका क्या महत्व आपको लगता है?
देखिए, हिंदी दिवस तो हम पूरे विश्व में मनाते हैं आज के दिन 14 सितंबर को। दुनिया के हर कोने में, भारत के हर कोने में, सरकार के हर दफ्तर में, लोगों के मन में, लोगों के घरों में। और इसके मनाने के पीछे की मंशा ये है कि हम हिंदी को जागृत रखें, इसको हम अपने जीवन में जोड़ें। ये हमारे गौरव का प्रतीक है। इसको हम अपने नए आने वाले पीढ़ी से, भावी पीढ़ी से जोड़ें, ताकि ये जो हमारी ये पहचान है हिंदी, वे हमारे साथ बढ़ती रहे, जगमगाती रहे और हमको प्रेरणा देती रहे। ये महज एक भाषा तो नहीं है, इसके साथ इसमें सभ्यता है, इसमें संस्कार है, इसमें हमारे देश की, हमारे समाज की छवि है। हमारे परम पूज्य एंसेस्टर्स का इसमें उनका आशीर्वाद है। इन सभी कारण के साथ हमारे अपने देश के प्रगति के लिए, समाज के प्रगति के लिए मैं समझता हूँ ये बहुत अहम है कि अपने भाषा को दिल से लगा के रखें और आगे ले जाते रहें।
बहुत सुंदर आपने कहा, भाषा को समीप रखें, इसको लेकर आगे बढ़ें। भाषा हमें आधार देती है विकास का। सरकारी तौर पर यदि हम देखें, और जब मैं सरकारी तौर कह रहा हूँ तो उससे मेरा मतलब शुष्क होकर नहीं है, रस्मयता से भारत सरकार पूरे मनोयोग से जो कार्य कर रही है, विशेष करके हिंदी भाषा को प्रोत्साहित करने के लिए, बढ़ावा देने के लिए कोई विशेष योजना जो आपको लगता है कि आज के दिन उसका उल्लेख करना विशेष प्रासंगिक होगा?
देखिए, हिंदी भाषा जो है भारत में सबसे ज़्यादा बोले जाने वाली भाषा है। इसको दक्षिण एशिया में, भारत में और दक्षिण एशिया को मिला के और अन्य देशों को मिलाकर देखें तो करीबन 1.5 से 2 अरब लोग इस भाषा का प्रयोग करते हैं, या तो बोलते हैं या तो समझते हैं। हिंदी दिवस हम लोग हर साल हिंदी पखवाड़ा भारत सरकार मनाती है, जिसमें कि वो सब लोग जो हिंदी में काम करें उनको प्रोत्साहित किया जाता है, उनको तरह तरह के इनाम दिए जाते हैं ताकि वो और हिंदी भाषा को अपने कार्य में लेकर आएँ। हिंदी भाषा के जहाँ तक बात है, आपको पता होगा कि हर साल मतलब हर अंतराल पर हम विश्व हिंदी सम्मेलन का आयोजन भी करते हैं। इससे पहले विश्व हिंदी सम्मेलन गत विश्व हिंदी सम्मेलन मॉरिशस में आयोजन किया गया था। तो इन सभी चीज़ों को लेके हम आगे बढ़ रहे हैं। आपको ये पता होगा कि नई शिक्षा नीति जो भारत सरकार ने जिसका ऐलान किया है, उसके अंदर भाषाओं को, भारतीय भाषाओं को एक खास महत्व दिया गया है और हिंदी को एक खास महत्व दिया गया है। ये हमारी अपनी राजभाषा है। 14 सितंबर को इसकी पुष्टि की गई थी, संविधान के तहत इसको राजभाषा बनाया गया था देवनागरी लिपि को लेकर, और इसी को हम आज सब जगह, हर देश में, भारत में, अपने घरों में इसको मनाते हैं।
बहुत ही सुंदर संदर्भ हिंदी भाषा का लेते हुए आपके अनुभवों का लाभ हमारे दर्शकों तक पहुँचे। आप विदेश सेवा में हैं भारत की, तो कई देशों में जाने का अवसर होता है, अलग अलग लोगों से मिलना भी एक सुंदर अनुभूति देता है। अमेरिका में भी मैंने देखा है कई ऐसे लोग जो भारतीय मूल के नहीं हैं, वो भी हिंदी भाषा पर अधिकार रखते हैं, सीखते हैं, सिखाते हैं। कोई आपका अनुभव हिंदी भाषा के संवाद को लेकर भारत से बाहर कहीं हुआ हो, और उसके साथ साथ राष्ट्रीय एकता की दृष्टि से हिंदी के महत्व के बारे में कुछ बताएं।
तो पहले मैं बात करूं राष्ट्रीय एकता की। हिंदी जो एक भाषा है, ये पुरानी भाषा है, हालांकि इसका ग्रामर जो है उसको स्टैंडर्डाइज काफ़ी समय बाद हुआ, लेकिन जो एक भाषा है, बोलचाल की भाषा हिंदुस्तानी कहिए, उसको हिंदी भी कहिए, इसके अंदर पंजाबियत है, इसके अंदर ब्रज की भाषा है, इसके अंदर अपभ्रंश है, इसके अंदर अवधी है, पंचमेल है, बंगाली है, संस्कृत है, और अन्य भारत की जितने भाषाएं हैं, मराठी है, सब का मेल जोल इसमें रहा है। तो इस कारण से ये पूरे हिंदुस्तान की विविधता को एक साथ लाकर एक धागा में इसको बांधता है इस भाषा से। मेरी खुद की ज़बान, मैं भोजपुरी भी बोलता हूँ, मैथिली बोलता हूँ, और जब मैं हिंदी बोलता हूँ तो उसमें दोनों की मुझे छाप, पहचान और उसका रस मुझे दिखता है, मुझे महसूस करने को मिलता है। मेरे साथ में मेरे कॉलीग बैठे हुए हैं, गुजराती बोलते हैं, गुजरात के रहने वाले हैं, लेकिन इनको भी हिंदी भाषा में वो सरलता नज़र आती है जो गुजराती बोलने में या अन्य प्रांत की भाषा बोलने में सब लोगों को महसूस होता है। बाकी जहाँ तक विदेश सेवा और हिंदी की बात है, मैं बता दूँ आपको, ऐसे बड़े अच्छे अनुभव हुए दुनिया के हर कोने में, जो मैं आपके दर्शकों को साझा कराना चाहता हूँ। हम लोग सूरीनाम गए, वहाँ पर जो हिंदी बोलते हैं उसका ढंग, बोलने का ढंग बहुत अलग है। शायद कुछ चीज़ें वो वहीं पुरानी तरीके से कुछ वो बोलते हैं, पुरानी शब्दों को इस्तेमाल करते हैं, जिन शब्दों को शायद हम भूल गए हैं। तो सुरनामी हिंदी का एक अलग मीटर, एक अलग स्ट्रक्चर होता है। वैसे ही आप जाएं दक्षिण अफ्रीका में, डरबन के शहर में, तो वहाँ की हिंदी को कहा जाता है नैताली हिंदी, कहने का मतलब नटाल का हिंदी। आप फिजी चले जाएं तो वहाँ पर भोजपुरी के कई एक शब्द आपको हिंदी में मिलेंगे, तो वो हो गया भोजपुरी जैसा, भोजपुरी का जामा पहना हुआ हिंदी। तो हिंदी के भी बड़े अलग अलग आयाम, अलग अलग रंग हैं।
जी।
फणीश्वरनाथ रेणु जी ने आंचलिक उपन्यास लिखने का, आंचलिक कहानी लिखने का प्रसंग शुरू किया। उनके कहानी में, उनके लिखने के शैली में आंचल का, एक प्रदेश के एक अंग का, उसका झलक दिखता था। वो अपने आप में एक अलग हिसाब है उसमें।
और भाषा किस तरह अन्य भाषाओं के शब्दों को लेकर वहाँ की माटी की गंध हम तक पहुँचाती है, वो आपकी ये बात सुनते हुए और भी स्पष्ट हुआ। पर कालातीत है भाषा, और जैसा समय उसके अनुसार वो अपने को ढालती है। और अभी जैसी स्थितियां हैं काउंसिल जनरल साहब, तो कोविड-19 के प्रभाव में हिंदी दिवस भी आपने इस बार अलग ढंग से मनाया, उसके बारे में कुछ बताएं।
हम लोगों ने यहाँ कौंसलावास में हिंदी दिवस मनाया। हमारे जो साथीगण हैं, इन्होंने जितनी प्रतियोगिताएं हमने की उसमें भाग लिए, उनको हमने प्रशस्ति पत्र दिया, बहुत लोगों को इनाम मिला, और सबको हम लोग ने, ये तो प्रतियोगिता हुआ ही हुआ, लेकिन एक तरह से सबने ये प्रण लिया कि वो हिंदी को सिर्फ हिंदी दिवस के दिन नहीं या दफ्तर में नहीं, बल्कि अपने जितने छोटे बच्चे हैं उनके साथ रोज़ाना, ऐसे तो बोलते हैं, लेकिन आज के बाद और मजबूती से आने वाली पीढ़ी को, भावी पीढ़ी को भाषा से जोड़ेंगे।
बहुत ही सुंदर।
तो ये था 6 बजे हमारा हिंदी दिवस का एक कार्यक्रम है जो भारतीय समुदाय है उसको जोड़ते हुए कुछ लोग हिंदुस्तान से भी, भारत से भी जुड़ेंगे, कुछ लोग अन्य देशों से जुड़ेंगे। तो कुल मिलाकर मुझे लग रहा है कि आज न्यूयॉर्क शहर में काफ़ी उमंग का दिन है, और मुझे आप सबसे ये साझा करते हुए, बात करते हुए, हिंदी दिवस की शुभकामनाएं देते मुझे बहुत बेहद खुशी हो रही है। इस भाषा को नए पीढ़ी से, युवा पीढ़ी से जोड़े, इससे हमको एक शक्ति मिलेगी, हमारे संस्कार, संस्कृति और सभ्यता को शक्ति मिलेगी, और हमारा स्वरूप, हमारा जो भारतीयता है वो और मजबूत और गहरा होगा। तो मैं आपसे, मेरा आग्रह रहेगा, पुनः आग्रह रहेगा कि आप लोग अपने घरों में हिंदी भाषा में सामाजिक भाषा की तरह अपने लोगों को, बच्चों को सिखाएं और उनसे बातें करें।
You're watching Vision of Asia Voice of the Community on ITV Gold. This program comes to you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursdays at 8 p.m. And a weekly special of Vision of Asia is brought for you with special care every Sunday at 11 a.m. We appreciate your continued encouragement. With a request to stay with us, we'll be right back after these short messages. Black Lives Matter movement is significant in the journey of America as we celebrate democratic principles in this nation. The need to have racial equality and fair as well as equal treatment continues to draw our attention. We have seen recent riots resulting along with the movement and voice which was referred to as Black Lives Matter in the aftermath of killing of some innocent members of black community by police personnel. Activists of this movement joined Aditi Lamba at our studio. Here are some excerpts from that conversation.
Joining us today is Hawk Newsome and Chivona Newsome. Thank you so much for being with us on ITV Gold.
Thank you for having us.
Of course, I have you here to discuss many important topics, but just beginning this information and this conversation, for people that may not know about Black Lives Matter movement, for people that may not understand what's happening right now, could you just explain to us what the movement is, and what is its driving force, and why does it continue to empower Black voices?
Well, our organization is about the full liberation of Black people. Our motto is of the Black Panther Party, and it's so much more than police brutality, even though that is at the forefront, because Black men and women are being brutalized and being murdered at the hands of law enforcement around the world. But we believe in feeding our community and community empowerment, filling up refrigerators, helping our community find jobs, and a whole host of other things for true Black liberation, because it's going to take a variety of ways to achieve that. So we work together with a coalition, and we just keep doing the work. I'm sure Hawk has some more to add.
Yes, of course.
It's hard to expound upon what you've stated, but if I may insert this. Civil rights in America, it may be, and it may have always been, Black people at the forefront pushing it. But what South Asian Americans might understand is, if Black people didn't fight to sit at the front of the bus, then they wouldn't be able to sit at the front of the bus. If Black people didn't fight for the rights to higher education, the rights to be educated in all schools, or the right to vote, then you wouldn't either, And so a lot of people are like, why are Black people complaining? Yes, we're fighting for Black liberation. But when we win battles for every person who comes to America that is not the dominant race, which is white people.
Yeah, and it's very obvious, we owe it, the civil rights movement, we owe it to the Black American population that went ahead, fought for the rights, marched everywhere. I want to kind of go into what is happening in the nation right now, because there's so much unrest, everybody's really upset, and a lot needs to be changed. So let's continue to talk about Jacob Blake. Very sad case. Since you guys are on the forefront, I'd like for you to discuss with me, both of you, what exactly happened, what is happening right now, and the tension just seems to escalate almost every day. I'd like to know, why is that happening?
You have to think about the history of policing in this country. It was started as a slave patrol. So that's how it came about. They would take people who look like me and Hawk and return us as property to their rightful owner. And nothing's changed from that. When law enforcement sees people like me, sees Black people, they view them as a threat. They have no regard for our lives. They don't care about it. And that's what happened with Jacob Blake when he was in the car with his children. He was shot multiple times and is currently paralyzed. And the sad part about it, this man, he lost his ability to walk, and they handcuffed him to a hospital bed. And you're seeing this repeatedly, as you've seen a young man down in Atlanta being pulled out of the back of an Uber. Hawk and I were hit with batons this weekend in New York, We are recovering from that, but the fight goes on. This is a long history of abuse in this country, about 400 years of oppression. Yes, people have taken to the street. The unfortunate murder of George Floyd pulled a lot of people off their couches and made America and the world pay attention. But this is nothing new. As Will Smith said, it just simply wasn't filmed.
To leave the roadway and utilize the available sidewalks. If you do so voluntarily, no charges will be placed against you. If you remain in the roadway and refuse to utilize the sidewalks, you will be placed under arrest and charged with disorderly conduct. This is the new. Since you have refused to leave the roadway, you will be placed under arrest on the charge of disorderly conduct. If you do not cooperate and accompany the arresting officer to the prisoner transport vehicle, or if you resist arrest, you may be charged with additional. Since you have refused to leave the roadway, you will be placed under arrest on the charge of disorderly conduct. If you do not cooperate and accompany the arresting officer to the prisoner transport vehicle, or if you resist arrest,
Calm down. Relax. We're moving.
you will be placed under
Relax. We all get it back. Why are you hitting him?
officer to the prisoner transport vehicle.
Get off. Wait, no, I'm not. I'm not.
We are seeing a minute portion of the atrocities that are happening in this America, in America, police violence against people. We're seeing a very small percentage of the cases just on TV. Just imagine what you don't see, right? Just imagine what white people might not see because, you know, the news might not pick it up or they don't have people in their communities pulling out phones and uploading them. But police brutality is a pandemic. It's not just happening to us, it's happening to everyone, right? So once again, we're out here fighting. We're fighting for the liberation of Black people, but it benefits everyone. And there's a lot of places where people can go and get data. There's websites like Campaign Zero. There's places that, like, you go to Black Lives Matter Greater New York.com. There's places where you can go and really understand what's happening with racism and police brutality in America. Just as simple as somebody could order food on their cell phone or look for directions, you can figure out why we're fighting and have an understanding instead of just making up an opinion.
You know, this brings me to a really somewhat of an intense question, but I think it'll be really smart for me to ask you that. We have heard of many unarmed Black lives being taken even since George Floyd. We have heard of those lives being taken even before him. If somebody was watching on ITV Gold right now, can you explain to us what it means to be Black in this country? And when you are talking about Black liberation, what does that truly really mean? Because I think it's very important for people to understand what is actually happening here with the community. So what does it mean to be Black right now?
Well, our Blackness is a source of pride. And I give credit to every Black person across the world who manages to have pride in their Blackness. Because in our schools, they tell us that we're second-class citizens. American schools teach history after slavery. They don't talk about Africans as kings and queens. They don't talk about Africa and algebra, right? They don't talk about Africa and architecture, the pyramids, right? They don't talk about the great civilizations of Egypt. They don't talk about astronomy. They don't talk about the great achievements of Black people. Now, what you do see is white beauty. Right? Blonde hair, blue eyes, lighter complexion. What you see is white talent and representation in legal fields. And it's sad because it not only makes Black people, but it makes everybody who's not white want to aspire to be white. Because that's their ideal of success, right? And what we're trying to do is dismantle that narrative. People should be proud of who they are. And they should have a respect and a love for humanity. And if they see that our humanity is being attacked, then they should be willing to fight back.
Suman Raghunathan is an activist as well as political commentator and strategist. She has been active in public life and served community for many years. Aditi Lamba talked to her for ITV Gold on various issues, including how President Trump handled the recent movement, which also was seen parallel to riots at several places. Multiple issues with Suman Raghunathan.
We have you today because so much is happening in the nation, and it's so important to educate our diaspora, especially with less than 2 months to the presidential and congressional elections. I just want to know, starting off this interview, what do you think should be the focus of the South Asian American population residing in the United States right now with the elections coming in, and where do we need to really, assert some understanding?
Well, I think the most important thing for South Asian Americans, which are the second most rapidly growing demographic group across the country, there are over 5.4 million South Asians nationwide. The most important thing is for those of us who can to be prepared to and to make a plan to vote. This is perhaps one of the most, if not the most important election in our lifetimes, in my lifetime certainly, and probably for the last century perhaps. And so it is one that will benefit tremendously from all those who are eligible in our community to make a plan to register to vote and then to be sure to cast those votes. And to finally, to your question, to ensure that they're able to cast the most informed votes possible. There are any number of issues that are on the ballot, not just for the presidential election this year, but for congressional elections, for state legislatures, for local races that deeply impact South Asian Americans across the country. And now is the time for us to be able to telegraph the voice of our community and how committed we are to exercising that voice.
You know, Suman, since we are talking about pertinent issues that really impact the diaspora, what are some of these issues, and what is the weight of these issues when we're looking at both the congressional and the presidential elections?
Yeah, well, I think that over the last 4 years, we have seen a number of assaults and onslaughts against our communities, ranging from efforts to depel immigration, to the rise of white supremacy and racist rhetoric, to questions about policing and the ways that law enforcement are interacting with our communities, all of which deeply impact South Asian Americans. And then the final piece that I will just flag on that front is the response or the lack thereof on the part of the current administration with respect to protecting all in our communities from COVID-19. And we have seen the real life fatal impact of that lack of responsibility or of action, and the ways that it has deeply impacted so many in South Asian American immigrant and communities of color across the country.
So when we are looking at COVID-19, how big of an issue will that be in this election? And just taking off of that, I know you just mentioned the White House and the current administration, but how do you think they have handled COVID-19, especially its relief efforts?
The short answer, Aditi, is that I don't think they have handled it. And that is part of the reason that we're approaching 200,000 people who have died from COVID-19 in what is supposedly one of the most powerful nations in the world. And I think the denigration and the lack of responsibility and response, and perhaps even most fatally, the efforts to deny the power of COVID-19 and its impact has resulted in literally deaths of so many of our community members and of so many people across the country. And if that is not a lack of responsibility, or really a turning on its head the idea of responsibility and leadership in a nation at a moment like this, then I don't know what is.
Time to say goodbye from today's Vision of Asia Voice of the Community. But before we go, here is the opportunity to remind you Be friends of ITV Gold on our Facebook page. Do subscribe to ITV Gold's YouTube channel and keep writing to us, events@itvgold.com. Thank you very much for joining us. Stay safe. Take care. This is Ashok Vyas.